Good afternoon. My name is David Schenker. I'm a senior fellow, director of the program on Arab politics here at the Washington Institute. Thanks for joining us today for this special policy forum event on Iraq's pivotal parliamentary elections. I want to note before we start the passing today of former Vice President Dick Cheney. Cheney was a driving force behind the liberation of Iraq from Saddam Hussein in 2003 and an enormous actor in American politics for decades. Regardless of how one views the legacy of Cheney, he was a true American patriot. On to Iraq. We have in the United States midterm elections today. There are parliamentary elections this week in Egypt. But the Council of Representative elections in Iraq on November 11th are likely to be the most consequential of all these three contests. We have 8,000 candidates running for 329 seats, and there is so much at stake. The composition of the legislature, the new government of Iraq, the disposition of the Hashid, the Iranian-backed militias there, and the future of U.S.-Iraq relations and more. To discuss the November 11th Iraqi elections and the key issues related to the outcome of this contest, the Institute's pleased today to host a panel of real Iraq experts. Joining us from Abu Dhabi is Mina al-Oraibi. Ms. Oraibi is a journalist and editor-in-chief of the National, an Abu Dhabi-based daily newspaper. Prior to joining the National, she was a senior fellow at the Institute for State Effectiveness, focused on Iraq and Syria. From Amman, we have Munqidh Daher. Dr. Daher is a MENA director and a board member of Gallup International, and he conducted, most famously, Iraq's first public opinion polling in 2003. He's still doing it today. We'll hear more about that later. We're also joined by my colleague in studio, Jim Jeffrey. Ambassador Jeffrey is the Philip Solon's Distinguished Fellow at the Institute. He previously served as U.S. Special Representative for Syria, Special Envoy for the Global Coalition to Defeat ISIS, and as U.S. Ambassador to Turkey and Iraq. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start. If you'd like to ask a question of our panelists during the event, please enter them into the Zoom Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you're watching this policy forum at our website or YouTube, feel free to email your questions to policyforum, one word, at washingtoninstitute.org. Mina, let me start out with you. What's the mood right now as Iraqis prepare to go to the polls? Iraq's been through a lot since the U.S. invasion in 2003. We had a bloody insurgency, the ISIS takeover and war of liberation, the deadly Tishreen protests, and more. Do Iraqis have confidence in the system? What do you expect in terms of turnout? Are they going to vote? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. And it is the big question, will Iraqis go out and vote? And voter turnout is an issue. This is the sixth major national election that's happening in Iraq since 2003. And each time the voter turnout has gone down, and it's a reflection of how voters feel about the political system. And unfortunately, the political system does not deliver for the people. There's a whole set of reasons why, but most importantly is that the parliamentary system that's in the country allows for a certain interpretation of the Constitution that many people argue against, actually, that you can form alliance and manipulate what the government actually looks like afterwards. So not necessarily those with the biggest majority of actual votes are those who determine what the government makeup will look like. And we've seen this where we've had months and months on end without a government being formed because there's all that horse trading and jockeying that happens after the election results are announced to see how the shape of the political elite comes together after elections. So there's a lot of frustration that voting doesn't deliver real change. at the ballot box. There's a number of other dynamics, which I'm sure we'll get into in this conversation, including the fact that Muqtada Sadr has called upon his followers not to vote, to boycott. Now, some people would say that actually Sadr is sensing even more the sense of anger on the streets, that people feel quite disappointed in the political system, so they wouldn't go out to vote, and he wants to claim that he's the one that still controls the street. Others would say, no, actually, his word really does hold sway amongst a big proportion of the society, including young people. And it's always important to remember that in Iraq, one of the biggest failures of the political system is not really heeding what young people want. And the expectations are that unemployment figures in Iraq are masked, but what we know, according to World Bank modeling figures, you have about 30% unemployment rate amongst young people. And so how do you get them inspired to go out and vote and feel that they can actually affect change through the ballot box is a big question.
Yeah, that's remarkable. 30% unemployment, even in the region, which has among the highest in several countries in the region, and even with Sudani hiring 1 million more government workers during his last mandate. Thank you, Mina. That's interesting. Munkid, let me go to you. What does the Iraqi electorate look like? We just heard from Mina that Sadr is boycotting. How is the coordination framework going to do? The Sunnis, how are they going to do? The Taqaddum party, will the Kurds, the PUK, and the KDP unite? What of Sudani? Do you have polling? Who's going to win here?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. To set the ground for more discussion, for further discussion, I would prefer to show or to present some very updated data from my last poll. So you can have some numbers to discuss with me or with Mina or with the ambassador. So this election or these numbers that you will see on the screen here. Next, please. Next. It's based on a poll that we just conducted in the Arab areas. It did not include Kurdistan areas for a certain reason. It's very clear that there are two motives right now. One is driving Iraqis to boycott the election. And this is not only Sadr call, but it's many civil society organizations, activists, etc. They are organizing a very strong campaign against the election to boycott the election. And there is another driver, which is or another trend, which is encouraging people to go on the 11th of November and vote. Right now, as you can see in the summary, it seems that, or the good news is, Sunnis are showing more positive attitudes toward the government, prime minister, and the election process in general. Yet, while the Shias are not showing the same attitudes, the voting turnout will play a significant role in deciding who will win the upcoming election. And as you will see in the next slides, it's expected that this turnout will be the lowest among all previous election. So next, please, next slide. As you can see, there was a positive attitude among Iraqis since Sudani took over on 2022. Iraq is going in the right direction, who say that Iraq is going in the right direction, increased, but during the last few months, it's decreased. Yet, Sudan is still doing very well. in comparison with all previous prime ministers. Next, please. And as you can see here, that might be strange for some of the audience, that Sunnis who think that Iraq is moving in the right direction are 63%, while among Shia it's 39%. In the mixed area, including Baghdad, it's around 50%. Still, in comparison with previous governments, this is a very positive direction. Next, please. Next, I will skip that. Yeah. Yet, the confidence in institution is still not that high, but with the, as you can see, with the Iraqi government, the confidence in Iraqi government is 38 in total, but among Sunnis, it's 50%. Among Shia, it's 35%. For sure, the parliament is showing less confidence, or Iraqis are showing less confidence in parliament. Only 24% of Iraqis are or have confidence in the parliament. Next, please. And in politicians, as you can see here, Sadr among the highest confidence rate.
Wow.
Yes. And this tell you something. Sadr is boycotting the election right now. Sudani is next, head by head, and if we take the margin of error, so they are almost equal. If we take in consideration margin of error of this poll, then they are almost the same, but still Sadr is a bit ahead of Sudani, while all others are going much less. This is the confidence in politicians. Next, please. And as you can see, historically, the first election had a very high turnout. It was on 25 or 2005, almost 80% of Iraqis, the turnout. Still declined till 2021. The last one, it was 35% of the total Iraqis who have the right to vote, while the formal number was 42 because they just calculated those who had the voting card. Next, please. The voting intentions right now, those who are saying that I'm sure I will vote, is almost 50%, 49. Yet I have to flag out a very important thing based on the experience with the previous elections. There were always that factor, we call it social desirability estimates, between 15 to 20%. What does that mean? It means that we are expecting, and I'm based on my experience with the Iraqi election, so the turnout will be 30 to 40%. It's on the 30s of those who have the voting cards. Still, I have right now a poll on the ground. I will get the data within the next 5 days. So maybe these numbers will change, but this is till now. So the expected turnout will be between 30 to 40%. This is the best scenario and the worst scenario. Next, please. And the expected ranking for me, I cannot uncover or disclose the percentages, so I will not be seen as someone who is promoting for one of the candidates, but for sure the Reconstruction and Development Alliance with Sudani. He will be number one, with a good space between him and Taqaddum, the Halbusi. State of law, Maliki will be the number three. And there are independents. Also, there is a good percentage for them. Then Sadiqun, which is Qais al-Khazali, Azim, Al-Hikmah, Fatih, Al-Hasim. And there are, till now, around 20% who are undecided. This is of those who have a card, who have voting card. And I should also flag out that those who have cards right now, they are 75% of the total Iraqis above 18 years old. So we have almost 29 million Iraqis above 18 years old. Those who have the right to vote because they registered, they are almost 21 million. And of those, there are 20% undecided. They say that for sure we will go and vote, but they didn't decide on whom they will vote. Next, please. Of course, these are the reasons for elections. Why they will not vote, and you can see the numbers here. It's very clear that they don't have confidence, and as Mina say, that it became a tradition in Iraq that those who will win the election, they will not be in the power. And that's one of the main reasons many Iraqis tell what difference my vote will make. Because if I will vote and my candidate will win, he will not establish the government. He will not, or this alliance, or they will not have or get the permission to, according to the Supreme Court in Iraq. There is a different story, and I think everyone knows it. So next, if I think this is the last. Yes. So thank you. And so I think with these numbers, I have set the ground for further discussion, David.
Yeah, no, thank you, Munki. This is very helpful, and some a few surprising tidbits in there. Of course, we'll get to the Kurds later, which are missing from this. But thank you, Jim. You're a longtime Iraq watcher. Does the U.S. have a dog in this fight? Who should Washington want to win? What do we think about Sudani these days? Do we want them to come back? What's the best case scenario here for Iraq, for the United States, for the international community, and what's a bad outcome in your opinion?
Thanks, David. A bad outcome is one that's bad for the Iraqi people, bad for the region, and bad for the international community. We have seen bad governments before. I will say, in defense of as we've just learned by reading between the lines in Mumkin's polling, of a dysfunctional parliamentary system, it provides a buffer to really bad, awful stuff. And as one who has seen a lot of really bad, awful stuff in Saddam's Iraq, next door in the Ayatollah's Iran, and in Assad's Syria, we have to realize that it's a tough neighborhood. And in comparison to these examples, Iraq, regardless of what happens, will probably be more stable and in better shape. That said, first of all, the United States is working very well with the current Prime Minister, al-Sudani. We also, from the polling, can see that he is a very popular politician. He will do well in the elections. And therefore, any outcome, I think, that would empower him to continue the trajectory he's been on and provide sufficient parliamentary support, first of all, to elect him as prime minister, and secondly, to support him in his initiatives, would be a very good outcome. In the larger context of a Middle East that is shifting dramatically, and while it's hard to say where it's going to end up, it's clearly generally shifting away from Iran, which is something of importance for Iraq, which has been very careful over the last 2 years not to get too involved in what has been really a regional war. So I think that some of my old friends who are trailing in number 3 and 4 and 5 position are able to come together in the parliamentary system. The Constitution allows that, and form a coalition to knock down the front runner. In the case of 2010, the front runner, at least by a bit, was Iyad Allawi, and he got knocked down. And we could see the same result this time. I think that that would cause some concern in Washington, but a lot will depend on what any government, be it al-Sudanis or be it a government of other people, do on specific issues. The fate of Kurdistan, relations with neighbors, the role of the Hashishabi in the society and in larger regional conflicts, and ties with Iran, ties with the Gulf, ties with the United States. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. Mina, let's talk a little bit about government formation. We still don't know what the results are, but we know last time, as you pointed out, it took almost a year to form the government. We also know, and this is neither here nor there, but the Biden administration was rather disinterested in the outcome. At the same time, there was a lot of Iranian involvement the last time. What will the dynamic look like this time? What do you think emerges?
Well, as you said, the American interest in Iraq, frankly, under the Biden administration, but also to a great extent, also the current administration, seems to be minimal. There is great interest in what's happening in Syria. Of course, there's the dynamics in Lebanon and so forth. It's not really clear who holds the Iraq file. I mean, even the recently announced Trump envoy is not somebody who's well known or has relationships in Baghdad or Erbil or other cities in Iraq where he can actually help mold what would come next. Also, traditionally, the presidency, when Jalal Talabani was president, when Barham Saleh was president, they also played a role in kind of bringing people together and so forth. And we don't really have that currently with the current presidency, and it's not likely to come up in the coming weeks and months. So it's not clear who would pull people together and kind of have these deliberations. Iran has huge interest, of course, in Iraq. Given everything that's happened in the last 2 years, Iraq really has always been important to Iran, but now has risen in importance, and their ability to hold sway over whatever government is formed is important. This is also an election campaign that has seen many more of the armed groups take up the image of political parties, and they will want to come in and become seen as political actors, not only as armed groups. And it'll be interesting to see, especially amongst the groups that are supported by Iran, which ones are able to lodge themselves into the political process and distance themselves as being just seen as armed groups. And so that will all come into play. Let's not forget that Kurdistan region had their own elections a year ago, and they still haven't formed their own government in the Kurdistan region. And so then the Kurdish dynamics themselves are different this time around, coming quite divided to the table. So it's very hard to make predictions because, as you said, we don't know the results. But if I was going to make a prediction, it would be that this is going to take some time again. I mean, Iraq sadly has held records for how long it takes them after a parliamentary election to actually come to an agreement. Hopefully, it doesn't take that long. We don't hit a year or so. But I think it will take quite some time unless the U.S. regains its interest and tries to have some leverage over it. Let's also remember that the Iraqi government has asked the UN not to extend its stay. So there could be a moment where you have the UN mission has left. The US doesn't have a real strong presence in Iraq. The embassy is unengaged. And you have a very active Iranian internal effort to try to influence how this government looks. Of course, internal dynamics will be the most important part of all of this.
Yeah, many interesting points there. I mean, Ismail Khani, I think, was in Iraq just last week. And of course, during the first Trump administration, when I was serving, I think I came to Iraq every month and a half for the whole time I was there. It was such a priority. Certainly, seemingly less so right now. Munkid, if I might throw basically the same question to you, who's going to be fighting it out here after the elections to form a government? We had, the Supreme Court ruling from the last time that sort of changed the equation of how you actually form a government that led to the Southern boycott. Who's going to be the key actors here? And, what do the numbers tell you about what the coalition will look like? I think you're on mute still.
Okay. So for me, it looks like the same scenario of 2021. While we had al-Sadr at that time, who won with a good part of seats, so 72 or 73 seats at that time. I think the current prime minister will have a very good also portion of the parliamentary seats, and there will be some kind of alliance between him, Halbousi, and Barzani. It seems that this will be the most predicted scenario, and they will be able to pass the threshold of having the majority. Yet, according to the last interpretation of the Supreme Court, there will be this 1/3 canceling 1/3, which can, because according to the last interpretation, they should have a 2/3 of the seats to appoint the president, who will select the prime minister, or who will name the prime minister. So here we will have the bottleneck as the last time, but there are some differences right now. The first thing is the regional and international factor. And on the regional and international factor, I don't think that Iran is as powerful as it used to be before. After the last war with Israel, I think Iran has lost a lot of its power and its influence in the region. That does not mean that it will not interfere, it will not try to put pressures, etc. But I don't think that it will have the same leverage that it used to have before, especially if the US administration, if the Trump administration showed more interest in Iraq and put more pressures here. So that could be a very important, and this, I think, even the internal players who are more important than the external, even the internal players, they are watching carefully what's going on in the region and the dynamics between Iran and USA. and they will move accordingly. So I think this time there will be a bit different dynamic than we used to see before.
Thanks, Mutke. It's very interesting and perhaps paradoxical, right? Iran has decreased influence regionally, but because of that, Iraq is more important than ever to Iran.
Absolutely. But they don't have. I think with certain dynamics between U.S. and Iran, similar to what happened on 2010. I think Iran will give up or will lower its expectations in Iraq.
Well, we shall see. Thank you, Jim. The last time the Kurds scuttled the chances of a return of Mustafa Kadhimi as the prime minister and basically delivered the coordination framework to power. The Kurds may again be the kingmakers here. We heard from Munkid that the Barzanis would probably go with Sudani. Should Washington be pressuring the Kurds to be productive actors here?
I'm a well-known proponent of Washington should always be pressuring everybody in Iraq to follow what Washington thinks that the Iraqi people think are the best way forward. And certainly a unified Kurdistan has tended to be a stabilizing factor in the country over the past 20 years, but it is not really unified now. There are a lot of problems, more in Sulaymaniyah than in Erbil, but still, I think that the United States and other actors have more influence on the Kurds than all of us really do on Baghdad. And therefore, the point is, and a lot of us have had a lot of experience with this, is you wait to see the election results. And then, as Monique mentioned, you have this convoluted system of creating a government where you first have to select the president. Well, nobody's going to vote for any president until they know who the president is going to nominate to be the prime minister. Actually, the first step is the first step is the speaker. Then after the speaker, you go to the president, and everybody has to know who everybody's going to vote, including down to individual ministries, before you can put things together. This seems really terrible. It is terrible, having lived through several of them. I'll say that I've watched the German and French parliamentary systems over the last few years go through similar agonizing periods, including we've gotten 5 French governments in the last couple of years, and Germany required 6 months to put together a government at one point. This is the nature of all parliamentary systems. It isn't something specifically wrong with the Iraqi constitution. It just has some minor, well, not minor, but it has its own peculiarities. Nonetheless, when the dust settles, the United States, first of all, and this is where we were in 2010 after a while, has an interest in any government coming to power, because after a certain number of months, the country really gets adrift and the people become very, very unsettled. But again, a government that at a minimum is not going to open the doors to Iran. That's very important to America and to the other countries in the region, frankly.
Thanks, Jim. Mina, let me ask you, so Munkid has painted a picture that it looks like Sudani is going to do well here. Can you give me a report card of Sudani and its first mandate? How did he do? What did he accomplish? Where did he come up short? How do you assess it?
I think Sudani was able to succeed in saying that I am different from previous prime ministers. Of course, he was the first prime minister to have remained in Iraq, was seen as much more nationalistic, didn't have this thing where I'll pack up my bags and leave the country when and if things don't go my way. And he was able to sell that. And I think that idea of, reconstruction and development comes in. However, so I think on that is quite good. Also, he continued what had started, frankly, with Kadhimi, to open up to the Arab world and really build on those ties. And I think he benefited from the legacy of what Kadhimi did, and of course also the regional dynamics of what was happening. There was the Iraq summit, the Baghdad summit, which sadly I think was a missed opportunity. Iraq could have benefited more from, and again, the dynamics that were happening in the region made it difficult. His report card internally, yes, I think he is more popular than previous prime ministers to a certain extent, but at the same time, corruption is still a major, major problem. And people don't blame Sudani alone, but they don't think he's done enough to combat it. And he hasn't been forceful enough to really push back against the issue of corruption and the kleptocracy that Iraq suffers from now. And I think if he had done more on that, people would actually have more faith in the system and have more faith in him. But they see that he was able to play the politics right to kind of appease different actors. Now, the violence in Iraq, thankfully, is much more subdued, but you still have acts of impunity, assassinations, killings of ordinary people that don't make, unfortunately, the headlines outside of Iraq. But there is a sense that law and order is limited when it comes to vested political interests or armed groups. So I think there, when it comes to the report card, I would rank it quite low in terms of impunity for people who carry out targeted killings, and also when it comes to fighting corruption, but a sense of a nationalistic tone, really toning down the sectarian rhetoric, which unfortunately we're seeing picking up just before the elections from other actors. I think for that he should get some credit in trying to have more of a nationalistic kind of voice and tone for the political atmosphere and statements that he makes.
Yeah, that I was in Baghdad in February, and it's stunning. When The Economist subsequently wrote this piece called "Baghdad Boomtown," you can see the construction, you can see the building boom, you can see the overpasses. There is something that has been accomplished, but certainly more to be done in terms of corruption.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say just on the building and the boom, we could have a whole other hour to discuss it. There's also the sense that, well, where is the money coming from and who's actually behind these different projects? And I think
that 100%. And so that was actually going to be my question for Munkith, actually. And we have a question that was sent in, and which is, who's building this? This is the Mohandis company. Is this another Iran making further, headways with its local political party allies, militias, Hashid? Is this just a different avenue for the Iranians to, insinuate themselves in a more permanent basis into Iraq?
Yes. First of all, we should underline some important points regarding Sudani here. His campaign slogan is so important: Iraq first. It sends a very strong message of how he is acting. If we add to Iraq first that yesterday he did not attend the meeting of the coordination framework, and the statement of that meeting didn't mention or didn't give any credit to Sudani, then we will know that the honeymoon between them is vanished long time ago. Now, who construct Sudani had a very good chance that in the beginning he was so supported by the coordination framework by a big parliamentary bloc. So he was able to pass a bill of 3 fiscal years. And Sudani has spent more than around $400 billion during the last 3 years. So it was there was a lot of money spent on construction. For the first time, I can see when I go to Baghdad, these tower cranes everywhere. It's a big workshop, and this is reflected very clearly on his numbers in our polls. During our polls, last year poll, it was so clear that he has got a very good popularity. By the way, I didn't show or didn't present one of the important number. Though he has got much less than the number that I will mention. He will get much less than this number as those who say that we will vote for him. But around 62% of Iraqis, of all Iraqis, including those who will vote or who will boycott, they want him a prime minister for a second term. So he got a very high credibility. And if I was in his shoes, I will not go in any alliance or in any coalition for election. I will go with my own list only, because when he added his alliances and other names to his list, the chances, his voting chances went down. So the guy has a good popularity. People want him. Yet, as Mina said, he didn't make good progress in two important files, which are the corruption. He didn't do well there. And the other dossier was the armed groups. Though I should give him a credit that he was able to leash these groups during the war and avoiding Iraq being in the middle of the fight between Israel and Iran. He has to get that credit, but still he was not able to dismantle these militias yet. As he said that maybe after 2026, the last day, 2 days ago, he said that maybe after the US troops leave Iraq. But anyhow, the guy has a very good popularity. For me, one of the important things, Sunnis have trust, and this make a buffer zone between Sunnis and ISIS and other. This is so important to avoid having ISIS again in Iraq.
But I think we can all agree on that. Thank you, Munkid. Jim, Munkid mentioned ISIS. I mean, whatever government comes next is going to have a lot of issues to contend with. The U.S. military withdrawal or downsizing the coalition, keeping ISIS at bay. Sudani has said publicly that he's going to only deal with the militias after the U.S. coalition, U.S.-led coalition withdraws. they came perilously close to passing a law legitimating the Hashid that would have been, I think, very problematic for bilateral relations. And this Mohandis company keeps on moving on, even though it's been designated by the U.S. Are you optimistic about Iraq's trajectory?
Well, let's start with ISIS. I look at ISIS, at least in the Middle East, as primarily a Syria-Iraq problem, and it is a problem that is under ISIS is being suppressed. It's under a fair amount of pressure. We see signs, particularly in northeast Syria, it's coming back. We don't see many signs of it coming back in Iraq. The polling of the Sunni population was very important. And I don't think anybody is particularly interested in the U.S. going away as long as there was any kind of an ISIS threat, because that was those of us who lived through it, and Iraqis all lived through it on the ground, a near-death experience in 2014. And it was a near-death experience for longer than that for Syrians, for many reasons, but ISIS was a major reason. And the U.S. and the Defeat ISIS coalition has developed very capable means to keep ISIS from regenerating as a state, as an army. And so I think in that case, yes. More generally, even if a more pro-Iranian flavor emerges after these elections, I'm not so sure if Iran knows what to do with that. It sort of knew what to do with Hezbollah when it woke up after October 7th, which was start attacking Israel. Well, that didn't turn out well. The Houthis did a little bit better, but they've gone silent too. There's not a whole lot of, while Iraq is more important in the sense that it's the most important remaining tool Iran has, but that tool has to be for some purpose. And it's pretty lonely out there if you're going to take on the Arab world, Israel, the United States, Europeans, Turkey, and with these few. So I think that the United States will try to deal with whoever comes out of this thing, but we will really keep our fingers crossed that it is what Monique is indicating is one likely scenario with al-Sudani and the group of others that we have long worked with.
Thanks. So you are optimistic.
I'm optimistic. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Mina, I know you've got to leave in a few minutes. Let me ask you a last question before you depart. We've seen lately a pledge from Iraq to disarm the PKK, right? That they're going to move in that direction. We've now got an oil pipeline, that is flowing again from the KRG to Turkey. Sudani appeared in Sharm el-Sheikh for this ceasefire signing in Gaza. Iraq has a water sharing agreement now with Turkey. These are some pretty remarkable positive developments for Iraq, particularly, and if you look at Iraq compared to other states in the region, they appear to be doing very well. How do you see it?
I think it is credit to Iraq's current government, the foreign minister and the prime minister, to have kept Iraq out of the storm that has, raged in the region, the terrible war and kind of so forth. I think it's also been a case that several leaders of the armed groups that are closely allied with Iran were given very clear instructions to lay low. And they were at certain points, we saw Iraq get close to the fray and then pull back. And Sudani was very clear in his public statements, not only in his private statements, but in his public statements, that we won't tolerate it. But it was one of the moments also when the US was firmly vocal and saying that also won't be tolerated. That was really under the Biden administration, where they came up very clearly and said, will not tolerate Iraq, having missiles from Iraq target Israel or other neighbors. So I think
but also Israel Israel also threatened Iraq by sending the note to the UN, correct? Threatened the Hashid.
That is true. But I think, I mean, again, Israel threatened a lot of actors in the region, and they still continued to go ahead. I think it was self-preservation for all of these actors. And one thing we know that Iran has strategic patience. And while we saw incredible developments in the region, there was that understanding that Iraq had to be kept protected for certain interests. Now, on Turkey, I think it is interesting in the relationship between Turkey and Iraq is, you know, ebbs and flows, but at the moment they do have points of understandings. The water issue is the most important, and of course, it's not just Turkey. Iran's also involved in the water issue, but that's one that actually has a lot of popular anger towards Turkey at certain times when the water situation is not handled, and there are international agreements that frankly are not being adhered to. So it's important that Iraq is trying to work from that. So through that. So that is positive. I agree with you. However, I would just say that Iraq and its strategic presence and its history should play an even bigger role and should have a more positive role. So for many people, this is the bare minimum, to be frank. And 20 years, well, more now, 22 years after the fall of Saddam Hussein regime, you would expect that Iraq plays a bigger role. And at the moment, it seems to be more just stay out of trouble rather than be an active actor in a region that really is changing. Also credit to them developing some sort of ties with the Syrian government, which is contentious for, again, many people of Iraq, the leadership in Damascus. And yet there was, you know, a courageous move to say, okay, how do we at least have some sort of agreements with the Syrians in terms of foreign fighters not crossing into Iraq and causing havoc there. So yes, I think Iraqi diplomacy is in some ways better, but a lot more to be done, to be frank.
Well, I mean, you've got very high expectations of Iraq. I do too. Listen, I think I'm going to ask Munkid and then Jim another couple of questions, but I know you have to leave to actually put your newspaper to bed tonight. It's 10 o'clock in Abu Dhabi, but thank you for being with us, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Munkid, if I can ask you, we've got about 7 more minutes here. One question for you and one for Jim. You know, of all places, Prime Minister Sudani had an op-ed in the New York Post today, talking about moving away from a security-based relationship with Washington toward what he called a partnership rooted in economic opportunity, combining Iraq's natural wealth with America's innovation. So 20 years on from the U.S. invasion or so, how do Iraqis view the United States? And how do they view Iran?
Mm-hmm. Well, we should differentiate between 2 different kind of perceptions, of Iraqi perceptions. For sure, Iraqis want U.S. or prefer U.S. as a security partner and economic partner. Yet they don't want a political influence over Iraq and the Iraqi policy. In comparison with Iran, both countries have negative perceptions among Iraqis, USA and Iran. But when it comes to the best security partner, the best economic partner, then USA jump higher, much higher. So in another way, what is written in the New York Times is reflecting what Iraqi people really want. They want a good and healthy partnership with USA, a partnership which secure not only, or which is not seen as two sizes partnership, They want to a partnership on the same, on equal base, with more focus on other than security and U.S. interest in Iraq. They want to secure Iraqi interest in USA, meaning all kind of areas that mentioned in the strategic framework agreement clearly.
Excellent. Thanks, Munkid. Yeah, it was, I think, a message in the post that certainly the administration will like to hear. Investment opportunities, closer economic relations that are, mutually beneficial.
But by the way, I noticed during the last few months, more and more U.S. companies, big companies, coming to Iraq to invest. This is happening for the first time. So I can see that the economic relations are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Exxon went back in, a whole bunch of big U.S. companies, and obviously related to the level of security and quiet there is in Iraq, relatively speaking, right now. Thank you, Munkid. The last question to you, Jim. Two questions.
Sure.
One, the administration's focused on disarming of Hezbollah, of Hamas. Is the Hashid going to become more of a priority for the United States, pressing Iraq to move on that front? And second, and a more meta question, you're really bullish on Iraq. Tell me why.
I'm bullish on Iraq because, first of all, look what the country has accomplished. We have been helpful. Other countries have been helpful. But at the end of the day, the Iraqis from 2005 on, that first election, have maintained a democratic system. Does it have its problems? I indicated not only Iraq, but all parliamentary systems have problems. But if you look at the history of Iraq before then, what a difference. The other thing is, and frankly, I've become more bullish ever since I had the Syrian portfolio, because I could see what a Ba'athist-led country in the middle of the region can turn into if you don't have reasonable decisions by reasonable leaders. And I could rack and stack who I really liked down to who I liked least, but all of them were truly trying to keep Iraq out of trouble. So that's why I'm bullish in general. On the Hashishabi, no, I don't think so, because first of all, unlike Hezbollah and Hamas, they didn't really directly get involved in the fighting. Secondly, they haven't been subjected to massive Israeli ground and air assault. And thirdly, I think that we set the tone when we made it clear that we didn't want to see them further burrow into the Iraqi state and government, but that it's hard to imagine that it will be a huge priority for this American government. I just want them, as I know you do, David, to put more attention into Iraq like we did. But even then, this will not be at the top of the list. If the Hashishabi just sit there and soak up resources, sadly, and look to Tehran, sadly, but do nothing else, I think we can live with that.
I think we can live with that. Well, we shall see whether we will live with it and how the Iraqis will move forward. I want to thank you, Jim, my colleague, Munkid Daher, for joining us from Amman, heading back for elections in Iraq, to Baghdad, I think in a few days, and of course Min al-Arabi, who was with us for the hour. So thank you very much for joining us for this policy forum, and stay tuned for more events and the scholarly policy writing from the Washington Institute. We'll see you soon. Thank you.